Hello YouTube, my name is Jack, welcome back to Barnyard Wargaming, and a kind of description today. I'm going to be going over the recent event that I went to, Battle in the Bush in Orange. I'm going to share with you my list, all of my 5 games, how they went, where I placed, and all of the hot goss. Yeah, so Battle in the Bush was a 75 player GT. That means there was 5 games over 2 days, 3 on the first day, 2 on the second day. It was held in Orange here in Australia. It was a really good time, honestly. It was a huge venue, loads of open space, air conditioned, there was great food, really great people, and I had a fantastic time. So, what did I take? Well, I took Demons, and I was best in faction for Demons out of 2 players. Sorry, Zach. There was quite a bit of variation between players, 75 people. We had all types of different armies, but there were quite a few that only had a few players, like Drakari, GSC, Votan, etc. Obviously, they all get best in faction, even if you only have 1 player. But overall, as a TLDR, I did place 7th. So I was 4-1, I lost 1 game, and that was to Igor, who ended up winning the tournament. Congratulations to Igor. So in my list, you can see I have the 3 big monsters, and then I have just a bunch of different little chaff units here and there. I actually have 7 characters. Leading up those is Be'lakor, of course. I think he's basically an auto-include in Demons at the moment, which is unfortunate because I actually would prefer to see him not in some lists, but he's just such a good linchpin. He allows your army to stage really well and get up the board. Next up we have the pair of Great Unclean Ones. I call them Rodigus and Fatagus. Rodigus is the named character. He basically gives you +1 damage for Nurgle units in melee, which is very handy. And he also halves OC and movement nearby, which is really helpful if you're trying to take the mid board and put a lot of pressure in the mid board. He has a lot of attacks and a lot of damage in combat as well. And a pretty good flamer. So he's more of the damage Great Unclean One, whereas Fatagus is he's like my speed bump. A lot of people try and kill Fatagus. A few people get the red mist and they see blood and they have to kill him. But he just doesn't go down. He is really hard to kill. 4+ invulnerable save, 4+ feel no pain at 20 wounds. T12, he is just not going down. He doesn't have a huge amount of damage, but he gives my army a 6 at feel no pain. So he basically just sits in the middle of the board and runs forward into the enemy lines nearby Be'lakor, so that I can get that 4+ feel no pain, always within shadow. And then combined with him and Rodigus, the flamers just chew through enough chaff that I can safely just take the mid board and have no OC nearby, which is really handy. I then have a few other characters like Epidemius with some Plague Bearers. The Plague Bearers are basically OC2, they're T5, they have a 4 up invulnerable save with Epidemius, 6 at feel no pain from Fatagus, and they survive. A lot of people actually killed them first, and a few of my games they were destroyed really early on, but they take a lot of work to get through, so if you spend your whole army killing them, then the rest of my army will just kill you instead. And they have a lot of OC, they heal really well, and Epidemius actually is no slouch in combat either. So they put a lot of pressure in the mid board and give me that extra OC plus screen, which is really nice in case I want to protect my unclean ones from something like a knight, for example. Really, really handy. I then have Skulltaker with his Bloodletters and Celeste with her Demonettes. So Skulltaker is used to kind of fight things that have a really high armor save, or have a lot of characters, or a really hard character that is hard to bring down. Skulltaker gets 6 attacks for rolling all hits and wounds, which is, and at damage 3 with dev wounds is really, really good. He basically can mince through entire squads on his own, and the Bloodletters are also just there to protect him. They can heal themselves if they happen to survive. They get a 5-inch charge because of the banner in their unit, and they just basically pick up something that I need to pick up, whereas the Demonettes have so many attacks, they are really good at picking up hordes. There's a 2d6 flamer in there with Celeste, and Celeste also basically stands back up once per game, so she will take one side of the board, die, stand back up, and then just charge into something else. She's really annoying to get rid of, and just a really good unit. I will specify for this tournament, I don't actually think that this is the way it works. I think that you can only wound things that are toughness 8 or more with Demonettes with dev wounds on a 6, even if you do have Celeste in your unit. I think that's pretty clear actually, but the TO for the event said that it was totally fine that I could I could dev wound things on 5s and 6s no matter what their toughness is. So for this event, the Demonettes were a little bit stronger than they should be, which did allow me to pull down some targets that I probably should not have. So keep that in mind for the description of these games, but they're a good unit even if they hit something that is not toughness 8. And lastly, for the characters, I do have the Changeling in there. I didn't really use the Changeling too much. I put him in there because I wanted a bit of Zench in my list to add that thematicism so that I would have all of the different gods in there. But really, he is good for 90 points and he causes a lot of battle shock tests. He's lone operative and he can take a whole side of the board on his own. So he's definitely not a bad unit, and that's why CSM players and Chaos Knight players are including him in their lists. But he didn't really do too much for me. He flamed quite a few things and stayed alive in most of my games, so he definitely didn't do badly, and I would not take him out of my list, but he's just there. He just does his thing. As for the few extra units here and there, I had a unit of 3 Nurglings. The plan with the Nurglings is to either deep strike them just to do some actions, or if I'm taking something like fixed secondaries, or if I know that I'm going to be going up against someone with a lot of melee that is not a monster or a vehicle, I will put them in the middle of my army. And then when things come to charge me, they're going to be -1 to hit in melee, which is actually really, really helpful against some armies that don't have a huge amount of rerolls. I do have a unit of 3 Plague Drones. The drones give reroll all wounds in shooting and combat against a specific unit that they shoot to other Nurgle models, which is really good when you have a flail, 2 flamers, and a lot of attacks in melee from the Great Unclean Ones and from the Plague Bearers as well. The flies are like a really nice tech piece. They're so cheap. The T8 with 5 wounds each. They can have that 6 up Feel No Pain from Fatigus, and they're basically just going to sit in the middle of the board or go and do an action and just give me a lot more extra damage for a really cheap, which is nice. I had a Skull Cannon. The plan with the Skull Cannon is it's a bit of backfield shooting. I don't actually think it damaged basically anything in my games, but what it does is inflict battle shock. Typically it'll be at -1, and if they fail, it'll be D3 mortal wounds from the shadow. And when something is battle shocked, you actually can pay a CP for a Draft of Terror to get +1 AP and reroll all wounds, which is really powerful for something like your Demonettes with dev wounds, or even Plague Bearers is really good, or against something really high toughness like a Knight with your Great Unclean Ones in combat. They can just reroll all their wound rolls, which is really, really helpful at bringing something tough down. And you can combine that with the drones to get reroll wound rolls on 2 different targets. Plus, Bloodletters also reroll all wound rolls against a battle shocked target. So inflicting battle shock is just really helpful. It's a tough unit to bring down as well in my backfield, and it's so cheap. So don't use it for the damage, but I do use it for inflicting battle shock. And lastly, I had a Beast of Nurgle. Now, I think the Beast of Nurgle didn't really perform well for me. I would use him to deep strike into a corner, take an objective maybe. You can pay for a 3-inch deep strike and put him on an objective if they only have something with OC1 on it because it's OC2. But that didn't happen for me in any of my games, so it wasn't super useful. And I think going forward, I would swap it for a Seeker Chariot. I'll get to that at the end. Okay, so going on to my games. In game 1, I versed a Necron player. Thank you, Jeff. Lovely Jeff. We had a great game. I was versing a lot of Destroyers. I think it was like 2 units of Destroyers, 2 units of 3 Heavy Destroyers. He also had 3 Tomb Sentinels. So there was a few deep strike shenanigans going on throughout the game. He put 2 Tomb Sentinels in the back corner. My Demonettes picked both of them up later on, and then I used them to re-deep strike later on in a corner elsewhere. Generally, I think I just out-sustained him in the middle of the board. He did have a unit of 10 Lich Guard there, but the Lich Guard were picked up by things like Bloodletters and Be'lakor and the Great Unclean Ones, and just a lot of damage over time. And eventually I won that War of Attrition. I managed to pick up all of his Destroyers, and I just ended up winning on points. I think it was a fairly low scoring game, so I think it was 86 points or something like that for me. It was a good fun game, kind of slow because Necrons versus Nurgle just takes a while, but it was good fun, and eventually I just won the war of attrition. As for game 2, I went on to verse Steve, your lovely opponent. Keep on doing what you're doing. Shout out to you, you are great, you are a legend. And he was playing Imperial Knights. He had 2 Crusaders and a Paladin Knight, and then he also had, I think it was 2 Warglaives and 2 Helverins. It was corner deployment, and we were trying to get into the middle for hidden supplies and priority targets to try and take as many objectives by the end of the game as possible. I played this one pretty well, but I think I could have played it a lot better. Towards the beginning of the game, I had the changeling start really close by. I moved him into the middle, and I was lucky enough to draw area denial. I should have kept the rest of my army back and put him on one of the middle objectives, and then just paid a command point to make that objective sticky even if I die, because then Steve would be more inclined to sit still. If he shoots me into the changeling and the changeling dies, I don't really mind because I still hold the objective. And if the changeling was to live, then that would be hilarious because there would be nothing else for him to shoot at if he failed his battle shock tests. And that would just be really, really good for my army. But instead, I moved up my plague bearers into the middle, and I turned off shooting for the paladin accidentally. I thought I was targeting one of the Crusaders with 2 guns, and I rolled a 6, and I turned off the wrong knight's shooting, and then all of my plague bearers and epidemius were picked up. So that was painful, and I should not have lost that unit so early. But later on during the game, I rapid ingressed my demonettes in the backfield. They picked up an armiger, dev wounds on 5s. Not normally supposed to happen, but it did. And then I picked up the rest of his knights just by slowly creeping forward with Be'lakor. Once Be'lakor makes combat with something, it's basically dead. And Skulltaker's unit actually was able to reroll all wounds against a battle-shocked knight in this game, thanks to the Skull Cannon, which was really handy and just minced through so many wounds on that one of those Crusaders because of dev wounds, and then Rodigus managed to finish it off later. I did table him. I lost a few of my units, but it was a pretty decisive victory. I think I got about 95, something like that. It was a good game and a lot of fun. Game 3, I went up against CSM. Now this was a really unfortunate game. Shout out to Jordan. I'm so sorry. He rolled like ass. When I say ass, I mean he rolled like ass. And I rolled like an absolute god. He did get the red mist, and he tried to bring down my Great Unclean One with a Baden shooting and melee, with 2 Forge Fiends shooting, and also with 2 units of Obliterators, everything with reroll hits, and all of the different pacts as well for lethals and sustained and everything. I probably passed about 80% of my 4-ups. He brought me down to 4 wounds, and then I just killed a Baden, a Forge Fiend, both of his Obliterator units, a Predator, the Changeling. It was gross. I think it was like a 99 to me or something. It was horrifyingly gross. And yeah, word to the wise, don't put everything into the Great Unclean One. It won't work. He's just too fat. So yeah, that was unfortunate, but it was a good game. Sorry for Jordan. He took it like a champion. And yeah, that was the final game of day 3. So going really well on to day 2. On day 2, I versed Igor. Igor ended up winning the event playing Necrons, and I'm a little bit upset about this game because I actually think I could have won. I lost by about 27, and it all went wrong at the beginning of the game. We were playing Hammer and Anvil, which is not a great deployment for me, and he has 2 Doomsday Arcs, which do a lot of damage, and I can't touch because they're basically screened by warriors, and I don't have the movement to get there, and I don't have the shooting to kill them before they start healing again. All of the advice I was getting from people leading up to this game throughout the night was I should just ignore the Doomsday Arcs and they won't really touch me. They don't have enough damage to get through. They absolutely do. And Igor is very smart to put them on the line, and I just took way too much damage. I whiffed a lot of my rolls, and Igor got some pretty good rolls with his amount of shots, with the amount of dev wounds he put through. and both my Great and Clean ones actually went down in turn 2, which is really, really unfortunate. He just had a better castle than I did. I could not maneuver around him well enough to be able to bring him down, and he had a Transcendent Satan Shard with, of course, the Sempiternal Weave, so I was basically just never going to kill that. I did very luckily Battle Shock it and make an 8-inch charge with Demonettes off Deep Strike, and then pay for reroll all wounds with Dev Wounds on 5s, and rerolling all hits because it was on an objective. I probably put through like 24 Dev Wounds, and he only had 9 wounds left. No 4-up Invulnerables, and he only had 4-up Feel No Pains. He passed about 17 of them or something, and lived. So basically what I did to Jordan the day before. And that sucked, because basically I lost that entire flank. My Great and Clean ones were already dead. I really put up a valiant effort. I got through all the Lich Guard. I got through like 4 or 5 characters or something. I nearly got through the Satan Shard. At the end of the game, I had a Skull Cannon and I had the Changeling on 1 wound. And I lost by like 27. That was my only loss of the event. And going forward, I think I would play a bit more cagey. Take out the Lich Guard on one side, ignore the Satan Shard a bit more, and then be a bit more aware of the Dev Wounds on the Doomsday Arcs. If it was a different map and a different mission, I think I probably would have won. But yeah, too many bad rolls, and it was my bad for trying to charge into the middle of the board and be super arrogant and cocky about the resilience of my Great and Clean ones against Doomsday Arcs. Word to the wise, they hurt, and I won't underestimate them again. Now, the last game of the day was actually hilarious. It was easily the best game that I had all weekend. I was against Taylor, who you will be seeing more of on the channel in the near future. I'm sure of that. He is a really good player and an absolute lovely gentleman. Literally the game before, he actually versed Ben, who's been on the channel quite a few times, and he beat him by 1 point, which absolutely devastated Ben and was hilarious to watch. And then leading on to this final game, he was playing Genestealer Cults against my Demons. Everyone suspected him to win, and he apparently was confident going into this matchup. Taylor, that's what they were saying. And you can see here from the 2 pictures, this was his big drop turn where he put down a lot of different units all over the board. I think he was a bit overly scared about the drones trying to fly over to one of his units and pick them up, whereas the drones only hit on 4s and they're not actually that killy, even if they do have blast weapons at shooting. And so because he was a bit scared on one side, he put 40 Neophytes into my Plaguebearer unit. He did pick them up, all of them, including Epidemius, which that hurt. Yeah, he rolled pretty hot. I don't think I rolled particularly great either, and he picked them all up. And then I tabled him. I just tagged everything in combat, nothing could move, I just touched it all. The Aberrants failed to charge onto my Great and Clean one, and my Demonettes basically rapid ingress to hold some primary, and then I just charged the Aberrants and killed all of them, basically. And then from then on, he had no more punch units. He deep struck some bombs onto one side in the remaining turns, and he killed all my Bloodletters and Skull Taker, and he did a few wounds to Be'lakor, and then I just proceeded to pick him up in the next turn, and I tabled him pretty efficiently. It was like a 94 to 42 or something like that. It was a great game, but yeah, I don't know. I was very protective of Be'lakor against those mines. I know how much those bombs do from the Acolytes when they land, so I didn't put Be'lakor on any objectives. I actually took fixed secondaries in this game, which was the only game I did, and I took Deploy Teleport Homers for the middle, which I only did in the middle once, and then I did in his deployment zone, I think 4 times, to get me almost max points for that. And then I got max points for Assassinate because he just has so many characters running around on the field, and that was it. Yeah, it was a good game. I actually forgot that Skull Taker, when he kills a unit, gives me a CP, which would have been very handy because I have 2 forms of CP regeneration in that list, one from Skull Taker and one from Epidemius. And yeah, all in all, it was a great game, and I think the list performed really well. What would I change if I was to change anything in my list? Well, I would definitely remove the beast and put in a Seeker Chariot. In fact, I think I'm going to be doing that in tomorrow's game, Tuesday, when this video should be coming out, I hope. And that will be against Neil. I'm going to put in a Seeker Chariot instead. The Beast is 70 points and the Seeker Chariot 75, and I had 5 points left over in my original list. The Seeker Chariot is actually a lot better than I thought. It's T6, 7 wounds, 4 invulnerable save, I think. It's pretty resilient to get through. It moves 14, and it's great at staging because it's OC3. You can move into the middle if people want to shoot you, and you can tell that that's going to happen. You can basically pay a CP to make an objective sticky, and then even if you die, oh no, you still hold 2 objectives in the mid-board, and you can inflict your Shadow of Chaos in the next turn really easily and get those deep strikes super easy without having to risk Be'lakor moving up so far. And then and if they don't come to fight you on that objective and they leave your Seeker Chariot alone, then it's just going to go off and do annoying things. It moves 14, so you can get Cleanse, you can get Area Denial, you can get Deploy Teleport Homer with it, all on turn 1, which is really, really good. And not to mention, it actually has shooting attacks at range 6, which are terrible. However, they're both assault and pistol. Advance and do an action because it has an assault weapon. Because you have a pistol, you can actually do actions in combat as well. So if you happen to be near a corner for signals, or if you're in the middle for Deploy Teleport Homer, something like that, you can actually do an action even if you're in combat, which is really, really good for such a cheap and fast unit. And on top of that, it's not a monster, it's not a vehicle, and it's not infantry, so it basically ignores all of the bring it down points, and it ignores all the anti-monster, anti-vehicle, anti-infantry weapons in the game, which is really, really good. So with that one changed to make the list have a little bit more variation, I think this list is really, really good. I won Best in Faction for Demons, and I also came 7th, and I won Renaissance Man, which is a combination between Best Painted and Best Player. Which is honestly incredible. I'm really happy with the results from the weekend. And yeah, I encourage you to try out this list yourself. Rodigus and Fatigus, they walk Be'lakor down the aisle, and it's just a good time. I think a lot of people are going to be shocked to see that I don't have Kairos or a lot of change or Shalaxi Hellbane, because those are pretty good units. But I thought Shalaxi Hellbane was a bit overcosted at 400 points, and now she's 450. So it's just not worth it anymore. She's too expensive, and she can go down pretty easily, and then you just lose a quarter of your army. Compare that to, for example, Rodigus. He's only like 260 points or something like that these days. He's T12 with 22 wounds and a 4-up invuln and a 6-up feel no pain. And he has 14 attacks, 2 damage. You can reroll all your wound rolls as well pretty easily in this list. You can buff him extra AP as well. You can make him have 7 attacks with lethal hits hitting on 2s at -4 damage, rerolling all wounds. I mean, that is just unbelievable amounts of damage, and he's really hard to kill, and he's half the price. He just doesn't have the same speed. So if you get into the middle of the board, he's really resilient. Plus he buffs the rest of your army, and he halves the OC of enemy units and move of enemy units as well. So, I don't know. I just don't think Shalaxi is worth it anymore. So, that's my takeaways from the weekend. If you're ever thinking about going to Battle in the Bush, please do so. It's a great time. The people there are really lovely. Shout out to all the people that I versed over the weekend. You guys are awesome. And to everyone that I had a great time with. It was just really, really fun. And thank you all for watching. Subscribe, like, do all the fun things. We're trying to hit at least 5K by the end of the year. I don't think it's going to happen, but there's hope. So subscribe, it's free. Please do so. If you want to become a member to this channel, it's only $4 Australian a month. We have some pretty good deals. Join in on some live streams, and let me know what you think about how I went and what you would change on my list, or what you've been running for demons, etc. Or if you've been to Battle in the Bush. I would love to know. That would be awesome. Leave me a comment, like, subscribe, do all the fun things, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!